to the bold analysis, ladies and gentlemen. Simply using elimination method, you will be faced by a very strong ticket. And officially, after Matian'gi joined the 2027 presidential bid, between Karua, Rigathi Gachagua, Eugene Wamalwa, Matian'gi, and Kalonzo, you eliminated Rigathi on legal ground. Eugene Wamalwa relatively looks the weakest with Martha Karua. You will remain with the strongest available ticket, Matian'gi, Kalonzo, in whichever order. Whoever is the candidate and the other is a running mate, that is indeed a strong ticket. And in this podcast, I'm going to demonstrate to you President Ruto's effort to dismantle that ticket. By the virtue of all angles, if you look at it from all angles, William Ruto's handlers are targeting Matian'gi and Kalonzo. That if that coalition is to remain intact until the next election, then those are the two that are going to be under attack. And that is what I'm going to demonstrate to you that has backfired. Kindly subscribe to our channel, click the notification bell and like our videos. And thank you very much for supporting this podcast. Remember, subscription is absolutely free. So when you subscribe to our channel, there is no single cent that is going to be deducted from your account because you subscribe. However, you'll be receiving notifications whenever we publish our videos. And just to support my point that is a strong ticket, it is not true that Matian'gi cannot counter William Ruto. Even though Kalonzo is diplomatic, but someone has just shared with me this video. Have a look.
When a political leader, a national leader tells people, I will put aside 150 billion for market women. I'll put aside 50 billion for boda boda. I'll put aside 100 billion for this. I know how much our budget is and the projected growth of our budget. That time you have not talked about the amount of money that you are taking to counties. You have not talked about transfers for the education sector and so on. Where are you going to get that money to provide that kind of service? You're just lying to those people because you are telling them things they want to hear. And because they won't ask you questions, you just get along with it. You know, when you keep saying this deep state, who is that? And the people are using that phrase and complaining are members of the National Security Council. They hold public offices. They tell you they are powerful people. So who is that? Not this facade and stories that are being coined and being bandied around. Just so that people create excuses and they camouflage around things that don't exist to survive. Or create excuses and pathways of lying and carrying the public along with them. I want to ask you as church ministers, I am your son, and as a public servant, we have a country to serve. Let us not be victims of some of these lies that you keep hearing around. But things that just don't make sense even to a fool. How would you tell people? Yeah. How will you stand up? I'm asking you. How, Bishop? How will you stand up in public and tell me, who is that? And then you don't even have the courage enough to take a decision and say, okay, because I don't agree with the Attorney General and all these people, me, I'm not going to be party to you. In the morning, you speak like government. In the afternoon, you speak like opposition. The artists, the political artists, who want to avoid that conversation, they come up with all manner of excuses. Oh, there are people who hate me called deep state, and you sit with them daily. So when do they become deep? When they are with you or they are not with you? This story of you must look for a way of creating.
This is the time C.S. Matian'gi was a cabinet secretary for interior, and William Ruto was inside government and hitting it from within. So it's very true that he's also brutal, by the way. Matian'gi is also brutal, but he's very cautious. And that is why even from his speech in Guse Stadium, he was very cautious of what he's saying. And now the reports emerge that William Ruto's handlers slowed down attacks on Kalonzo Musyoka and had even tried to reach to Kalonzo for a political deal using or rather dangling speaker or running mate slot to the man from Kitui. A move that will clearly, if you ask me, this move will clearly trigger Raila Battalion walkout anywhere, leading to anywhere, including but not limited to Wamunyoro. But it is in public domain that William Ruto is reaching out to Kalonzo so that he can pluck Kalonzo from that opposition coalition. Interestingly, this is why these two critical events, this is what is bringing you to these two critical events, or these three critical events that I want you to look at. While Matian'gi was in Kisii, Uhuru Kenyatta, the fourth president of the Republic of Kenya, Gideon Moi, and Kalonzo Musyoka made a joint public appearance during Gideon Moi's son's wedding that was happening. And I want you to look at the photos that have been taken there and all that, even though that was an event. And the reason why that meeting is very critical, that appearance is very critical, is the fact that Uhuru Kenyatta is going to be a strong, Uhuru Kenyatta and Gideon Moi is going to be a strong pillar in controlling or rather containing Kalonzo Musyoka. And let me tell you, do you remember the day Raila Odinga was unveiling Martha Karua as the running mate in KCC? I remember very well, it was the month of May 2022. The man that was looking for Kalonzo Musyoka, in fact, I was having some chat with a friend who was telling me that Gideon Moi is the person who was dispatched and even was meeting Kalonzo. Even the day Kalonzo was unveiling a politician from Narok to be his running mate after breaking away from the Azimio Access. You know, Kalonzo walked out of Azimio Access for some time. Quick exit, then came back. The man that was dispatched to control Kalonzo and to make sure that Kalonzo remains within Azimio is none other than Gideon Moi. So that meeting at Gideon Moi's place goes without any doubt that it was a strategic one, that Uhuru Kenyatta and Gideon Moi, their principal role, and of course, they also elevate Kalonzo. And I know that is also one thing that Kalonzo will want. There have been an attempt that since Matian'gi arrived, even some politicians that were warming up to Kalonzo Musyoka are now going to support former CS Matian'gi. So that was an event to try to control. Number two, Raila Odinga was in Kiambu. And he was attending a burial in Kiambu, and to be specific, Thika. He continued with the criticism on President Ruto, a confirmation that the bread in the blood-based administration, in that blood-based administration, the bread might not be too sweet for Odinga coming here in future.
Today there's a Gazette notice. They are saying that they want to amend the constitution in order to legalize this CDF national government. What does national government have to do in the counties? In counties, we have counties which have got executive powers to implement. Let the national government let go of resources to the counties as provided for in the constitution. Health is devolved, provide the funds down there. Roads also, it's devolved. You don't need Kura and Kera. Have only Kenha for the national government, dealing with international highways, national trunk roads, and feeder roads, and leave all the other roads in the regions to counties and send the money down there. Why should you be building markets for counties? Let counties build a market themselves. How about affordable housing? Let counties build affordable housing. Then you will not be talking about 15%. You will be talking about 35 to 40% devolved funds.
However, this has been the tired charge sheet against Rigathi Gachagua in the public opinion court. Ethnic blocs will take the challenge and they start caucusing around the kingpins before even attempting to negotiate. That direction we are taking, and I need to forewarn this, that with the acumen of the state, with the state resources, William Ruto will clearly, when the politics are taking the tribal angle, and then the decision of the voter is based on what the kingpin is saying, he can actually buy that kingpin to cause division. And that is what I'm saying. While we go that direction, the country must remain focused. And just to tell you why that is a factor, the state deployed Osoro to attack, downplay Matian'gi's event. Osoro made this post, but just after 5 minutes, he realized that Kenyans, or rather the Abagusi community, descended on him with blows. And since then, they've been asking him to at least open the comment section so that they can give him their peace of mind. This is Osoro's post. Moto ya karatasi, 3 possible moves to soon declare support for YSR, William Samoei Ruto, to leave the country quietly for another 6 months or more, when back after 6 months, be a principal for some school, an opposition coalition. Bottom line, mtangoja atangaze forever, hawezi. Even investing in good sound, media team, ama hata image, ni ngumu. Sarakasi, cowardice, meanwhile, ako chini tafuta mwingine, naendelea kupata report ya ground. The man saying naendelea kupata report ya ground has closed his comment section. But something Osoro has mentioned, it has triggered my mind. Matian'gi do not have a media team. And maybe I'm wrong. Does he have a Facebook page or a Twitter page? I'm yet to see one. If there is one, you can share with me. But he must actually invest in a good media team. And secondly, I may not comment about sound, but people from Kisii can tell us, was there a problem with the sound? However, I know that for a good campaign, you really need sound. And probably hired. But I made something on this issue of media team. However, I might excuse him because he's trading very careful and did not want to go full-blown. Sometimes you leave those gaps for, there's still gap, there's still space for improvement. By the time we'll be making 3rd or 4th move, we will know. And I find, nevertheless, I find Osoro's, sometimes politicians very reckless. Arati, if Simba Arati is the deputy, is the vice chair of ODM party, and he had to endorse Matian'gi's bid, who is Osoro? You know, at what expense, even if Osoro is the minority whip in the National Assembly? Was he going to be de-whipped because of just, or better still, you just fail to comment? Should not just accept to be used for something like, you know, I didn't hear Matian'gi attacking President Ruto, or rather Kenya Kwanza. He was very careful. So this attack, to me, is pointless. So Ruto handlers have one principal rule to make sure they break or they perish. And the rule they have to break is no unity in the opposition coalition. Even if they want unity, but they should not want it in that opposition coalition. And two people for target is Kalonzo, Rigathi, is actually Kalonzo and Rigathi. Because they understand Kalonzo and Rigathi are the ones in target to dismantle a potential Rigathi Matian'gi bid. Why? They understand that Uhuru Kenyatta is closely behind Matian'gi. And it will not be easy to go Matian'gi way. But it is very possible for to target Kalonzo and Rigathi. Remember, the only tool against Matian'gi would be the charges to try to revive the ghosts of his ghost when he was in government by then. A route that William Ruto will not want to take, because at the end of the day, Matian'gi will explain himself and he will be emboldened more. So the ways in the opposition must be wary of what I'm going to say next, because these are the two schemes for divide and rule. And I want to explain both of them, Rigathi and Kalonzo Musyoka. Number one is Rigathi Gachagua. One of the schemes available is to procure a declaration from the court that Rigathi Gachagua impeachment was unconstitutional. Of course it was. And Riggy G would be paid all his dues backdated to the day of impeachment. Maybe. And with the principal focus of number one, at least lower Rigathi Gachagua's firebrand attacks on him ahead of 2027 general election. Political advisors around the president have made it absolutely clear that he is the thorn of Kenya Kwanza administration. And with him, you can see Mithika Linturi and Justin Muturi coalescing around Rigathi. So he's very lethal. And that would be second objective, will also to try to ensure that Rigathi Gachagua is convinced to run for presidency. Therefore, there will be no united opposition. Now this is it. If Ruto, if Rigathi, Kalonzo, and if Rigathi, Kalonzo, Matian'gi, Karua, if all are viable to vie, then even the elimination method will be very difficult. He will still use him so that this kind of announcement, this kind of rule will also attach on Kawira Mwangaza, Waititu and Sonko. Because Ruto is realizing that he made a big political blunder without a fallback plan when he impeached Rigathi Gachagua. And that impeachment is a very strong wall, is a very strong anchor on the opposition coalition. It's something that is holding that opposition together. So this will be the second objective. And on this, that is not united. The third objective on managing Rigathi Gachagua is to try to endear himself to Mount Kenya. Ruto still believes that Mount Kenya is the region that cannot be despised. And it is true, you cannot despise Mount Kenya, especially when you want to run tribal arithmetic in an election that is very delicate as this. It is not advisable at this moment to kick out Mount Kenya. However, the intel around is this. Even if Rigathi Gachagua tries to take Mount Kenya back to President Ruto, the damage has been caused and that will actually destroy him. Whichever way. Now that is on the side of Rigathi Gachagua. And if things remain as they are, and the impeachment is upheld, so that he cannot vie, then the next alternative is Kalonzo Musyoka. And as I said, Ruto team will try to convince Kalonzo to be at least his running mate in 2027. Kalonzo might actually listen to this offer based on these grounds. If he decides to be on the ballot to be a presidential candidate in 2027, he needs a big financial resources, which probably, and it is true, he doesn't have. Or even if he's a candidate, for his candidature to make sense, he must need the endorsement of at least, or both, at least Rigathi and Raila, or both. His presidential bid will not get any traction if he doesn't get a good endorsement. It's true, and Kalonzo is not a weak candidate, but the press briefings in Nairobi is not the thing. You need to go to the ground, and Kalonzo is one person that doesn't want to do difficult work. Ushaiona yule mtafanyi ataki kazi ngumu. Yes, Kalonzo is that person. He doesn't like the hustle. He doesn't like the political hustle. So long as Machakos, Kitui, and Makueni are intact with him, Kalonzo has some comfort. And then becoming very bossy and diplomatic. And that kind of attitude, that kind of approach probably is not viable for our political space. The second aspect in it is age factor. Kalonzo in 2027 will be 74 years. If he supports a candidate like probably Matian'gi, who would want to run for 10 years, it means in 2037, he will be 84 years. So he might not be able to vie. And I'm saying this because Ruto is serving second term. He would rather choose to break ranks with Kindiki and pick Kalonzo. So that Kalonzo, in believing that Ruto is serving his second term and then he will endorse him, he will be a candidate in 2032. But interestingly is whoever jumps ship to join Ruto at this point will not be a strong candidate in 2032. You rather lose as a candidate in opposition in 2027 so that you join the succession in 2032. But if you join Ruto at this point, Kalonzo will not be. Kalonzo will be reduced to zero, especially in 2032 election, even if he helps Ruto to get the second term. But remember one factor that William Ruto would want is to have Kalonzo in the sense that if he can be able to have Kalonzo and maintain Raila, then he can validate even a rigging in the next election. Nilikuwa na ile 2 million ya Ukambani. Nilikuwa na Raila. Do you think ningepoteza hiyo kura? That is also one of the factors. Now, if he also decides to be another candidate's running mate, then it has to be 100% that that candidate will win. And if the candidate loses, Kalonzo will be called for another 5 years, which he will not want to. But then, Kalonzo would also listen to the naysayers who tell him, oh, deep state, they cannot win, so-and-so is weak, and so is this way. And I believe, for me, I'm convinced, if you can have Kalonzo Matian'gi ticket, that ticket will get the backing of Uhuru Kenyatta, Gideon Moi behind them. And that angle, that ticket will be well funded. That ticket will get the backing, for it to get the backing of Rigathi Gachagua and Martha Karua, that ticket will get the goodwill. And the Rigathi sympathy vote in Mount Kenya will go to that ticket. To that, they have really made a point. And then you go to Western and get Eugene Wamalwa and Natembea and try to decimate Mudavadi and Wetangula, who has nothing to show on ground, you can get some 40% from Western. And on that end, the election is very tough for the incumbent. Tuonane kesho bana.